viewers, myself Dr. Sangeeta Narang. In this session, we'll be discussing the prevention and management of occupational hazards and diseases. We have already learned about the work-related diseases and injuries, and they are responsible for deaths of 1.9 million people in 2016. This is according to the first joint estimates from the World Health Organization and International Labour Organization. So they are important by their magnitude. Work-related diseases and injuries, they strain the health system because if these workers fall sick, they have to be treated in the hospitals or in the healthcare centers. So we are loading the health system. They reduce the productivity of the worker and can have a catastrophic impact on household incomes. If the worker is not able to work to its maximum efficiency or falls sick or has to repeatedly visit a hospital or a health center, it will obviously affect his household incomes not only by loss of wages but also by medication and maybe hospitalization. So, this is how the report wants it, and we know it practically also that if a worker is falling sick, he has reduced productivity and he has to spend even out of pocket on the health. So, how do we identify a hazard? Let us take the example of an agricultural worker. An agricultural worker who is working in the fields, he has ergonomic stress. For example, he may be carrying heavy weights or standing for long durations of time or using rather awkward positions while he is working. Very often you will see the women carrying loads on their backs in our country, in the fields, or even the children working and helping their family. So this leads to ergonomic stress. The second danger is the chemical spray. A lot of pesticides, herbicides, and weedicides are being used and they are sprayed in the fields. So these may be carcinogenic to the people who are spraying them. A particular concern is for the pregnant females and the younger generation who are working in the fields. Then there may be noise induced hearing loss. We all have heard how the tractor makes the noise that is used to plow the field prior to sowing the crop, and or it could be the thresher that is used following the harvest. So these lead to noise pollution. Then there can be illnesses which are caused by dust, that is during threshing and winnowing. There can be physical injuries. Physical injuries are in fact quite common. There may be trips and falls because the place may be uneven, or there can be injuries due to the use of equipment like the sickle and the plow. And very common in our country are the snake bites and the bites by the insects. So if we look at only a particular category, that is a simple agricultural worker, we see that he is exposed to all kinds of occupational stress, that is the ergonomic, the chemical, the noise induced, the dust induced, and the physical injuries. So what are the objectives of today's session? We will be listing the most common occupational diseases that are encountered in our country. We will identify the common pathways for the causation of these diseases, recognize these occupational diseases and suggest referral for management, identify the disabilities due to occupational disease and work towards their limitation or appropriate rehabilitation, and recognize the hierarchy of controls model for the prevention of occupational diseases. So what could be the cause for occupational diseases? As we have seen in the example of agriculture worker, same may be for other diseases. They can be due to physical agents, they may be due to chemical agents or biological agents. Then there are occupational cancers and diseases of psychological origin. Let us see the diseases due to the physical agents. Excessive heat, for example, in a factory where there is heat production, may lead to hyperpyrexia, heat exhaustion, heat syncope, heat cramps, or burns and local effects such as prickly heat. This can also happen in agricultural workers if they are working the whole day in a hot summer day. Then they can have hyperpyrexia and heat exhaustion. The second may be opposite due to cold. This may be due to trench foot or lead to frostbite or chilblains. Light. Excessive light may lead to occupational cataract or minor nystagmus. People who are working under high pressure, they can suffer from Kyson disease, air embolism, or there can be blasts due to explosives. Noise, very common in all industries and all occupations, leads to occupational deafness. Radiation, for example, in a person who is working in an MRI setup or working with an X-ray machine, it is known that radiologists and radiographers, they have higher incidence of cancers, leukemia, aplastic anemia, and pancytopenia. There can be mechanical factors, especially those who are dealing with the production of material like the production of tires or iron molding. They can have injuries and accidents due to mechanical factors. And electricity is well known to cause electric burns. Let us see what are the diseases that can be caused to chemical agents. It may be gases like the carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide that is generated during the production of chemicals. It can be nitrogen or hydrogen sulfide or sulfur dioxide, and many other gases depending on the gas that is being emitted. Then pneumoconiosis. Pneumoconiosis is an important category of occupational diseases that is called due to dust. The dust can be inorganic or organic. Inorganic dust, the examples are the coal dust, which leads to anthracosis, silica. Silica leads to silicosis and predisposes to tuberculosis also. Asbestos is well known to cause cancer lung and asbestosis, and iron leads to siderosis. Then there can be vegetable dust like the cane fiber leading to bagasosis, cotton dust leading to bicyanosis, tobacco leading to tobaccosis, and hay or the grain dust that leads to the farmer's lung. The third category is the metals and their compounds. Well known are lead, mercury, cadmium, manganese, beryllium, arsenic, and chromium. Chemicals like acids, alkalis, and pesticides. I still remember there was a worker who even drank the acid. By mistake in a water bottle, the acid was poured. The bottles were identical. This worker I particularly remember took the bottle that was used to store acid and he used to bring water from home. So one day instead of the water, he drank the acid and it led to a lot of esophageal complications and he had to be operated many times. Then there can be solvents like the carbon bisulfide, benzene, trichloroethylene, and chloroform. Then there are diseases due to biological agents like brucellosis, leptospirosis, anthrax, actinomycosis, hydatid, psittacosis, tetanus, encephalitis, and fungal infections. Fungal infections are very common and particularly in those industries and in farmers where they are constantly in contact with water and poor ventilation. Occupational cancers like cancer of the skin, lungs, and bladder are well known. Occupational dermatosis like dermatitis and eczema. A recent recognized, I won't say recently occurring, but recently recognized diseases are diseases of psychological origin like industrial neurosis, hypertension, and peptic ulcers. These non communicable diseases are also taking a toll on the health of workers in all occupations and across the globe. Let us learn the hierarchy of controls for occupational diseases. The first and most important is eliminate the cause. Suppose there is a lot of noise in the place that people are working. So we have noise control measures and we have noise proof rooms. The second thing is the substitution. For example, if there is a machine that involves a lot of manual labor and the laborers are exposed to injuries and a better machine is available in which the workers' health is not jeopardized or there are better mechanical controls, then we can substitute the older machine with a newer machine. So this is substitution. The third is the engineering controls. That means there are measures in place so that the hazard to the worker is less. These are called engineering controls. Next is the administrative controls. We have control over the workers in an administrative way. That is, we have better work design, we have better time management like we see most of the accidents in factories, they occur at odd times when the people are sleepy, usually at 3 o'clock or at around 7 or 8 o'clock when there is less light. So, in administrative control, if we can change the shift or the working hours of the person, maybe the hazard would be less. Next is the use of PPE. We all know in COVID times everyone is using the PPE kits. So, this is another way of reducing the occupational hazards. Let us learn the basic modes of intervention and levels of prevention from the textbook of Park. We know the interaction of agent, host and environment leads to the disease. So, what is primary prevention, what is secondary prevention and what is tertiary prevention? Primary prevention is during the pre-pathogenesis period, that is before the agent, host and environment have caused the disease in the person and we prevent the causation of the disease. There are two modes of intervention in this, the health promotion and the specific protection. During the period of pathogenesis, there is secondary prevention and tertiary prevention. Secondary prevention means early diagnosis and treatment of the disease that has occurred, and tertiary prevention, there are two modes of intervention that will reduce the disability, that is disability limitation, and the last one is the rehabilitation. So, let me repeat, the primary prevention is during the period of pre-pathogenesis and the secondary and tertiary prevention is during the period of pathogenesis. There is another concept that is coming up these days, that is the primordial prevention, that is even before the first step. In this, we avoid the risk factors that lead to the disease. For example, stress leading to hypertension, right? So, this attempts to avoid the emergence and establishment of social, economic and cultural patterns of living that are known to contribute to an elevated risk of disease. Non-communicable diseases, primordial prevention is very important. Then in the case of occupational diseases, let us take a specific example. For example, if we remove a machine that makes a lot of noise, that in the long run is likely to cause noise induced hearing loss. This is an example of primordial prevention. Next is primary prevention, and the first step is the health promotion for prevention of occupational diseases. In this, important is the Japanese method of 5S. These are 5 Japanese letters which have been used in quality management. So, first is sort out, that is keep the place tidy. So, if the workplace is tidy, there are less chances of the diseases occurring, less chances of injuries occurring. For example, in a lab, if there is flow of work, then chances of the acids or the alkalis or the chemicals spilling on the ground or injuring the people are less. So, first thing is sort out and set in order, that is orderliness, that is the order in which the chemicals are to be used. If they are kept in the right order, chances of misuse or spillage are less. Third is shine, S for shine, that is keep the area clean, cleanliness. Cleanliness of the workplace is very important in the case of infectious diseases as well as non-infectious diseases. Fourth is standardize, standardization of the procedure both at workplace and in the industrial settings, of the way it is going to be sorted out, the way a work is going to happen. If we have standard operating protocols, then it is much easier and the occupational hazard is less. Not only in psychological terms, it also saves the time and prevents the injuries to the person. And then important is to sustain all this, sustain the sorting, sustain the orderliness, sustain the cleanliness and sustain the sanitization. So, these are the 5 S for quality control in an industrial setup. Next, let us come to the specific protection for prevention of occupational diseases. We all know vaccination. So, if we are vaccinating a person who is working in the food service industry with typhoid vaccination, We are not only protecting the worker but also the community in which this person is suffering. Hepatitis B in all healthcare professionals, and these days we are hearing of COVID vaccination in all healthcare professionals. They not only protect the person, that means the occupational hazard, but they also prevent the spread of the disease to the community and the family members. Use of personal protective equipment. This also helps the person who is using the PPE as well as the other workers who are coming in contact with him. So these are examples of specific protection. Once the disease has occurred, let us do an early diagnosis and prompt treatment. For this, we need to have a good knowledge of the workplace. That means you just walk around the place and identify the potential problem areas. You can also talk to the employees at regular intervals because they are the best people who can identify whether they are having any health issues related to the work they perform, and they should be encouraged to report work related health problems as soon as possible. Regular medical examinations should be conducted at appropriately frequent intervals to identify problems early and send them for treatment. It is mandatory in the factories to have a first aid station and an ambulance in place, especially in hazardous industries, so that in case of any accident or emergency, the workers can be shifted to the nearest help that is available in the form of a health center or a hospital. Disability limitation. Once a disability has occurred, for example, a person has lost his limb while working in a machine in a factory, then the treatment has to be given, and later on the artificial limbs may be provided so that he is able to work, he is able to do his daily routine. So this is disability limitation. And regular physiotherapy can help in preventing deformities in the case of fractures or other injuries to the bones and ligaments. What is the aim of rehabilitation in occupational diseases? First is the medical rehabilitation. That means if the person has had an injury or a scarring, then that should be treated by the doctor and he should be rehabilitated. Then is social rehabilitation. Suppose the person has lost one eye or he has lost one limb, then the society may not accept, the society may ridicule, oh isko to ek aankh se dikhta nahi hai types. So this rehabilitation has to be taken care of at the psychological level, and this is called social and psychological rehabilitation. The family has to adapt to the new circumstances, and more important is the vocational rehabilitation. The person should be able to work, he should not be out of work. So for this, maybe the work has to be redesigned, or he has to be shifted to a place where he can work despite the disability. For example, if the person has lost maybe the right finger, the right index finger, or the right two fingers of the hands, so he is not able to operate a machinery. But definitely he can be shifted to a place where he doesn't have to use a right hand and he is in a sitting position. Maybe he can do a security work, or if he is able to write with the left hand, then he can be given that kind of a work instead of continuing to work with the machine that he was initially working with. So rehabilitation is important. What is the aim? First, recognize the disease, refer for appropriate management at an appropriate health center, whether it is the primary health center or the camp management or the hospital or a medical college. So the organization has to decide where he needs referral at the earliest. Once the treatment has been given at the health center, the doctors and the physiotherapists and other people, occupational therapists play an important role, so that they can identify and limit the disabilities and call for appropriate rehabilitation. Thank you. Happy learning.